Red is winning. So you have to kick on there a little bit. Anyway, so you got them from all across there, and you got another one from Oregon. And Brooke, I am not familiar with you. You're welcome.
Hi, I'm joining from Kansas.
From Kansas. Well, welcome, welcome. Anyway, so I'm gonna Janelle has offered to do this. And by the way, I just noticed today in my title and in my email, I put be the start of your own story, and it's supposed to be star. So I got it right in most of the places, but I'm there and I go, man, I didn't even notice that wrong until just today.
Oh.
So I appreciate that, and I appreciate Janelle be willing to do this. And Janelle, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Are you going to do a PowerPoint or anything?
No, I'm just going to talk, and
Okay,
if people have questions.
Okay.
Can you give me a second? My dog wants to get up in my chair, and she's old, and I have to go help her. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we're all amateurs here. So I appreciate you guys all being here.
Why are you doing this to me now? Okay, there you go.
Because they can.
Oh, hopefully she'll be happy now. Sorry about that.
So
oh no, she just jumped off.
I'm gonna spotlight you there. And Janelle, if you need to show a video or anything like that, just let me know and I'll make you a co-host.
Okay.
You probably had some experience on this.
Yeah. How long do I have to talk?
Well, some people go 45 minutes, some people go an hour and a half. So anywhere in that opening is perfect.
Okay.
And it's going to be yours if you want to answer questions as we go along here.
Thank you.
You can do it. It's like I said, it's all yours.
Okay, perfect.
And
yes.
I'm gonna highlight you here in just a second. Okay.
There you go. Awesome.
It's all yours.
All right. Well, hey everyone. Good morning. I'm in Virginia. I know you guys are some of you on the Pacific Coast, but nice to meet all of you. And I'm happy to come here. I just basically want to talk with you, share my story, talk a little bit about what I mean by be the star of your own story. It actually is the subtitle to my book, which is Take Center Stage, Be the Star of Your Own Story. And it really was born out of my own story and my passion for helping women become confident in themselves and who they are, and really in their own voice, being able to speak up and share, their heart, share their message, share their opinions, share their ideas, be who they are, be the star of their own story, shine their light. I've found through my own journey and working with women as a coach for more than 8 years now that this is a real struggle for a lot of women, being confident and being willing to speak up has been hard for a lot of women. And it's actually something that there's been a lot of research about as I've done some studying and over the years. And it's a common thing. And some of you may have heard of the book The Confidence Code, which was really based on a lot of research. These two journalists actually did a lot of research and traveled the world talking to women about confidence. And there's been a lot of studies on the imposter syndrome, which is also a common issue a lot of women have, even successful women. So this has fascinated me because of my own story. In one study done in the UK, women were asked how confident they feel in their professions. Half of them reported having feelings of self-doubt about their performances in their careers. Half of the women in the workforce in this particular study. And I feel like that represents probably around the world. And I feel personally that that's just too much. Women are half the population. And so my passion is to really help women step more into their own place in a comfortable way, in a confident way, not in a feeling like I'm boasting and bragging, because it's not about that at all. It's just about standing sure and secure in your place in the world, and that space that you were meant to take up and the things that you were called to do. And I believe that every person on the planet has a purpose, a divine purpose, something they are uniquely gifted and designed to do in this world. And sometimes finding that and stepping into it takes a long time. And sometimes it's hard, it's difficult. And sometimes we get stuck in jobs and roles that aren't really fulfilling that purpose, and we're just doing it because it's what we do, and yet we're not completely fully satisfied. And so all these things kind of play into this whole topic around confidence. Among 162 high achieving women that were sampled in another study done by the two authors of the Confidence Code, Dr. Pauline Clancy and Dr. Suzanne Imes, this pattern emerged in their study of women that, and I find this in my own practice, women that just dismiss their accomplishments as if, oh, that's nothing. I had a lot of help, or, it just happened, and sort of breezing past accomplishments and going on to the next thing without stopping to celebrate that and say, you know what, I did do that. I did accomplish that, and I'm proud of myself. And often in this pattern that they noticed, that women would believe that their success would disappear if others discovered that they were imposters, right? And that happens a lot. Like even Maya Angelou, who I'm sure all of you have heard of her before, right? She's famous poet and activist, and did lots of things, and was very successful and well known and very accomplished. But she is quoted as saying that every time she wrote a book, she said, I always feel like they're going to find me out now. They're going to find out I'm not really a good author, or, really great at what I do. And I thought, if Maya Angelou feels that way, then, and she's as successful as she is, and this is pretty common thing. So I'm kind of on a mission, really, I'm on a mission to help women break through that. And no matter what age you are or what it is you do in life, but to be shining in your own light, taking your space on stage in your life, like center stage of your own life. Not center stage in the sense of, hey, here I am, everybody, I'm greater than everybody, I'm so wonderful, but your life. Because I found in my life, I was hiding out backstage behind the curtain. I wasn't coming out onto that center stage. I was hiding out. I was diminishing myself. I was playing small where it was comfortable. And there's many ways that we get to that place where we're playing small and feeling not confident. Many different things can cause us to get there. Sometimes it's gender bias or stereotyping. Sometimes it's messages that we've received from our culture that tell us, as women, you should be in the background, and you should be quiet, and you should play small, and you shouldn't be too assertive. You shouldn't speak up too much. We've been told that. And don't talk about your accomplishments, because then you're going to seem like you're bragging. So I'm just curious how many of you have ever felt that way. You can just raise your hand, wave at me, or put it in the chat box that you've ever felt like, I can't really talk about what I've done or speak up about things, because then I'm going to seem too assertive, or I'm going to seem like I'm bragging. So at least one person is relating. It's pretty common for women. And we feel like, we need to kind of be quiet. There was one story I heard where there were men and women in a meeting, and this one woman had her purse in the chair next to her. It was an empty chair. And then so a man came into the room, and she took her purse out of the chair, and she kind of like diminished herself. She physically made herself smaller, almost like subconsciously, that feeling of, I have to take up less space because this man came in the room, or any person came into the room. So even physically showing that, and she realized what she was doing, and it's a thing. It's very pervasive. So I work with women to help them take up your own space, and don't feel like you have to diminish yourself. You're not taking away from other people when you shine your own light. You're actually helping other people to shine their light as well. When you're in that place of confidence, really assured of who you are, really seeing the value and the worth you bring to the world in being you, not being anyone else, but being you, you actually give permission for other people to do the same thing, because it takes away all the competition. It takes away the comparison, because you're comfortable in your own skin, and you're comfortable with who you are, and you value yourself and what you bring to the table. You're not looking for that validation from other people. You value yourself. And when people see that in you, it's really attractive and people feel comfortable and safe around you because you're not outshining them. You're not trying to push them aside. You're not telling them they're less than you. You're just being you. And so then that gives that space to other people to be them. And I think what a wonderful world it would be if everyone was just being themselves, fully embracing themselves and shining their light unapologetically, unashamed, unafraid. And as they're shining their light, they're actually helping other people shine their light. So this is my mission. This is my purpose. And I want to share with you my own story of getting there, but there is a question in the chat. So I'm going to stop for a second here. Tony, I have a hard time determining when to talk about my accomplishments or which ones are appropriate of discussion, not being boastful or prideful. Great question. And I think this is probably something a lot of people can relate to. And there is, you don't go around talking about your accomplishments all the time to everybody. Obviously, right? There is a time and a place for this. And sometimes it's, for me, if I'm being asked a question, what do you do? Then I'm going to share what I do and what successes I've had. Or if I'm giving a talk or a presentation, or, if I'm with friends and I just had a great accomplishment, then I'm not going to be afraid to say, hey, just wrote a book. And what's really interesting about that is I ran into a friend, and I don't know why my stuff is backwards back there. That's weird. I just ran into a friend not too long ago who let me see if this fixes it. There we go. I think, who asked me, I hadn't seen her in like a couple of years, right? And I run into her in the store right after my book was published, which was January 22. And it took me 4 years to even write the book. So I was so proud of this accomplishment. And I run into her in the grocery store and I'm like, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. And hug each other and everything. And she says, well, how are you? What's going on? And I said, I'm so excited. I just published my book. And she and I had talked about it years earlier that I was writing this book. So I thought she'd be really happy for me. And she kind of had a weird reaction, kind of like, oh, okay. And I thought that was strange. And then later she sent me this really long text saying, here we haven't seen each other in years. And I ask you how you are. And the first thing you do is you talk about your book. And I thought, and she said, she thought that I was being really concerned about myself, self-absorbed and all these other things. And I said, I thought about that for a minute. And I asked myself, was I or not? And I thought, no, I was genuinely wanting to share something I was excited about, an accomplishment that I had. And I am proud of myself for writing this book. And I'm talking to a friend who she and I had a history where we had talked about our books we were writing, and I thought she would be happy for me. So sometimes people will receive you talking about your accomplishments as you being boastful, even when you're not. There's a story I heard about Simone Biles, who, is a very highly decorated gymnast, Olympic gymnast. And she was talking about all the awards she had won. And she said that she'd won more awards than any other gymnast up to that point. And I think it might've been in the US. And she was getting a lot of flack for that because they thought she was boasting. And she said, well, no, it's a fact. Here they are. Like, here's my awards. I could show them to you. Here they are. And I thought, wow, good for her. She's not backing down. She's proud of herself and she's stating a fact. She's not saying I'm better than all the other gymnasts in the world. She's just saying I have won more awards because I have, and I'm proud of that. And so there is that difference. And, you do want to check in on your own heart. Am I saying this to show that I'm better than other people? Well, then, you should rein that in. That is boasting and bragging. If you're trying to set yourself up as better than other people. But if you are just genuinely proud of yourself, there's nothing wrong with sharing that in certain situations from a heart of just, I'm proud of myself, and a lot of hard work went into that. And I'm not ashamed to tell people that, hey, I accomplished this. So, men, as Scott shared, even men sometimes have these same feelings. And in the studies that I've seen on confidence, generally speaking, men have an easier time celebrating their accomplishments or asking for a promotion or applying for a job, even if they don't have all the qualifications. Men are kind of used to, hey, I'm really proud that I did this. Here's my degrees, here's my awards. And they're not saying it, most of the time, they're not saying it from a prideful place. They're just used to being comfortable with sharing what they have, the facts, right? And a lot of times women are not. And I think a lot of that has to do with that internal programming, messaging we've heard through the media, through our culture, through maybe our parents growing up, the different roles, between men and women. And I think that has held a lot of women back from stepping into confidence. So don't be afraid to write out your accomplishments. You don't have to go sharing them with everyone, but I always tell my clients to go to the mirror, look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm proud that I did this. Good job. Pat yourself on the back. Hear yourself saying the words to yourself that you're proud of yourself. And that goes a long ways in creating that inner confidence that can help you be able to have more success and make progress, because you need confidence to be successful. You really do. Confidence brings success, helps you be successful. Confidence attracts success. And so even if you are just building that in yourself by hearing yourself say those words in front of the mirror, that goes a long ways. We often are our worst critics, right? We in our heads tell ourselves that we're not good enough, or that was stupid or dumb. And, we put ourselves down all the time. And so I want to change that to, I don't want to be putting myself down. I want to talk to myself like I would to my daughter when I'm proud of her. I want to talk to myself in that same way. And that really builds more of that muscle, right? Of seeing the value that you have and the good things in you. There was a question, this question that came up that changed my life in this area of confidence. And the question was, do you know how great you are? Do you know how great you are? So when I ask that question, what comes up for you? What's your first thought to that? Do you know how great you are? I'm just curious what your reaction is, because my first reaction was, me? I'm not great. I'm just Janelle Anderson from Christiansburg, Virginia. At that time, I was a teacher. I haven't saved the world. I haven't done anything great. But that question kept coming, and it was an internal question that was coming up. It wasn't somebody asking me. I felt like eventually I realized this is a message from God to me, because that's how he talks to me. I get these thoughts that flow up into my mind and they don't leave, and they're not thoughts I would normally think. So this question just kept coming. It was persistent. Do you know how great you are? And I was like, oh my gosh, what in the world? And this went on for about 2 weeks. And I kept pushing it away, and I kept diminishing that, and I kept disregarding it, thinking, I am not great. What do you mean? And finally, because it persisted, I thought, okay, all right, let me just sit with this for a minute. Let me consider this question. Do you know how great you are? And I began to do some reading and just some meditating and kind of sitting with it and reading some scripture. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Bible, but Psalm 139 is where I landed, and I dove deep into that. And it's really empowering, because it talks about how we are fearfully and wonderfully made, how unique we each are. And the more I dug into that, and what do those words really mean, and all of the meaning behind that this is really how God sees me. And so who am I to not see myself that way? What if I opened myself up to this idea? What if I was open to receiving this idea that maybe there's some greatness inside of me, instead of always putting myself down and always discounting myself? What if there's something good in me that I have refused to see because I felt like I'd be boasting? What if I just sit with this? And so I started to open myself up to this idea. And as I did that, it led me down this path of really discovering my unique strengths, my personality traits, all the different things that make me me. Took some assessments and looked at my successes through the years, looked at my things that come naturally to me that people compliment me on. And I began to just make a list. And the more I did that, the more I saw the good things in me. And it led me to this place of being able to look at myself and say, you know what? I am great in my own way. Just being me there's a greatness there. There's a potential in each one of us to be fully who we were created to be. And that is greatness in each of us. Greatness is you being you to your fullest extent and building on your strengths and developing your talents and gifts and being all that you are. And as I saw it that way, instead of seeing the word great as being like, a famous person or a well-known person who's done, huge things, I can be just great in being who I am and contributing to the world in my own way and really see the value of that instead of putting myself down and saying I'm not good enough. What if I started saying I am good enough at this? This is what I'm good at. And it's really a great thing. And that just helped me to start developing my potential and focusing more on that instead of looking at my weaknesses, if that makes sense. And it really helped me build a lot of confidence because I'm not great at everything, right? None of us are. But each one of us has something we're really good at, that we naturally are good at. And that when we are walking in that place, it helps other people. It has an impact on other people. So I'd love to just hear from some of you. Throw in the chat, like, what do you feel like you're really good at? What's a strength you have that other people really find value in? Also that you, that when you're walking fully in that, you can see the positive impact it can make on others. Because I really feel like that, seeing the strength you have that impacts others is an important piece of this. It's not just about being great in yourself for yourself. No, it's how that when you are using it and letting it flow, that impacts other people. It makes a difference in the world through your gifts. And that's why I believe we're given the gifts that we're given to make a difference in the world. So what are some of the things you see in yourself?
Do you want those in the chat or do you want them to just ask you?
In the chat, that'd be
Okay.
cool. Just, yeah, I'm kind. Kindness is huge. Yes. I did a whole exercise and I do this often in my workshops. I'm trying to think if it's somewhere around here, but I made a visual board when I was walking through this period of time and really discovering more about me. And I put the words on a board of these traits that I have, like kindness or inspiring, or one part of the exercise is that you text people you know that love you and ask them to send you words that they would use to describe you. That's a very empowering exercise to do. You will be amazed at what comes back. And then what happened with me is I got these, several people said I was a trailblazer. And I thought, what do they mean? Like, how are they seeing me as a trailblazer? I never would have used that word for myself. But I started looking at it and I thought, what is it they see in me that had them using that word? Often people see the greatness in you and you don't see it yourself because you're just too close to yourself and you're too used to putting yourself down and looking at the weaknesses, right? We do that. It's human nature. And so I looked at that word and I thought, what is a trailblazer? And I kind of looked it up. I Googled it and saw all these descriptions. And I thought, oh, I can see where they would see me as a trailblazer because at 61, I started my own business. And so for a lot of people, that's a trailblazer, starting something new when you're older, and I'm going out there and trying things that they would be scared to do. So they see me as like a trailblazer. So I adopted it as my own. I was open enough to receive that and say, okay, I'm a trailblazer. And I put that on my board. And so putting all these words on a board that describe you is very empowering as well for yourself, for your own self-esteem, and they're true about you. This isn't stuff you're making up. Some of the words I put on there were after I took assessments like the Strengths Finder or the Enneagram or, personality assessments. And I took those words that are describing me and own them. This is me. And I put that on the board. And that's a very empowering, confidence building. So really the point is for you to see this beautiful treasure of who you are and allowing it to come forth, right? And allowing it to come forth to make a difference and valuing it for yourself. Because when you value it, other people will value you. When you don't value yourself, how can other people value you? So I love what's coming in here to the chat. We've got bringing people together to support one another. That is such a huge gift and strength. Seeing what's good in other people when others seem to see only bad things. Oh, we need that in the world. We need people who see the good, who see the positive, and will remind us of it. When people message me and express their appreciation for helping them through things I post, I appreciate your thoughts. Awesome. Yes, 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 yes. These are so great traits that other people see in you or that you've seen in yourself. This is what we want to focus on, not on the bad things, not on the faults and frailties. We all have them. And there is this place of really embracing all of who you are, even with your weaknesses, because you're human. And it's a beautiful combination. It makes you you, but really, growing those things that are strengths and gifts. And that's, in fact, Gallup did a lot of research. They created the assessment, the Strengths Finder assessment, and they did a lot of research around it when they were developing that tool. And what they found, they went out and studied women, not just women, but people who are very highly successful and also very satisfied with their lives. And they thought, how does those, what is it in these people? Because you can be successful and not satisfied, right? And you can also be really satisfied, but not very successful. So that combination, how did they get there? And what they found was that these people were focusing on developing their own strengths and building their careers based on their strengths. And they weren't worrying about their so-called weaknesses or those areas where they're not very strong or not great at. And the more that you build on that, the more satisfaction is going to come and the more success will come because it's your strengths. It's what you're meant to do. So I do want to share, kind of a little bit about my journey and a little bit about this process I came up with called the STAR process. It's all about, being the star of your own story and what that really means. We all have come to the place where we struggle with our own self-doubt and confidence from different ways, different things that have happened in our lives that have brought us to that. And for me, it was a lot of trauma in my early 20s. So the first one happened when I was 19. I was a sophomore in college. And I woke up one morning in my bed in my apartment early in the morning. It was still dark. And this man was on top of me. It was a man that I had met at a bar the night before with my roommate. And I couldn't understand what was happening. And then I blacked out. And when I came to in the morning, I realized I had just lost my virginity to this man who I didn't know. I had always wanted to wait till I got married. It was very important to me. And so I was devastated. But the thought was that I had done something to deserve this. I somehow put myself in this situation for this man to do this. It wasn't until many, many years later that I realized I had actually been drugged that night because I don't remember anything from the bar until when I woke up. So I had actually been drugged and raped, but I did not know that in that moment. I thought there was something wrong with me. I must be a piece of trash. That was the thought that came. And it embedded itself into my heart. And I didn't talk about it because I was so ashamed. And so that began my journey of trying to find someone to validate that I was worthy of being loved. And of course, that led me into more and more relationships where I was not loved because I was so desperate for it. And then 4 years later, I find myself at the age of 23 sitting on a bar stool in a casino in Las Vegas, all dressed up, beautiful outfit, makeup and hair done perfectly. But I don't feel beautiful in that moment. I want to run because I do not want to be there. But I look over at the door to the casino and I see my boyfriend standing there watching, making sure that I follow through with his plan. I feel trapped. I can't get out of this. I don't know how I got here. Soon, an older man comes and sits next to me. He turns to me and he asks, "Are you working?" And I, with everything inside of me screaming, "No," I say yes, because I feel trapped and I also feel worthless. That began the first day of 3 years of being trafficked by my boyfriend in Las Vegas. Far from home, far from family, already feeling like I'm worthless when he met me. And I did not realize at the time that I was being trafficked. I just thought I was worthless enough to do this, to become a prostitute. Having been raised a Catholic, I mean, you can imagine the load of shame. 3 years later, hundreds of men, hundreds of these situations, I am completely shut down. I feel like this is my life. Somehow I have put myself into this place and I'm trapped forever. And then one glorious night in the middle of January 1980, we get into this terrible argument. He actually has me on the ground choking me, and I think he's going to kill me. But then he stops and he runs out of the apartment, and I'm desperate to escape. And so I call the only person I can think of. It's 10 o'clock at night in Las Vegas. I call my mom in Virginia. It's midnight her time. I'm crying, I'm sobbing, and she does not know that I've been trafficked for 3 years. They don't know. But she knows something's seriously wrong. And so in this one phone call with 2 words, I am rescued out of this situation. My mom says, "You know, honey, I think that Jesus just wants you to come home to him and have peace." Home and peace. Those 2 words were like a magnet. I just wanted that so desperately. I wanted to feel at home and safe, and I wanted peace. More than anything, I wanted those 2 things. And so she asked me to pray with her. I don't even remember what we prayed. I was just like, yes, I want this. And after we prayed and I got off the phone, immediately a sense of peace just enveloped me. And I knew in that moment, like, I'm not going back out there again. I don't care what he says or does. Suddenly I have strength and courage to say no. All those years I didn't, and now I do. It changed everything. So I said no, I wouldn't go back out. And a month later, I was back home in Virginia, out of that. But unfortunately, mentally and emotionally, still that damage had been done. I was traumatized. I had not told anyone because I was too ashamed. And a year later, I ended up marrying this guy because he still had a hold on me and convinced me that I should marry him. And the thought was, well, who else will ever want me? So I married him. We lived another 6 years together. He continued his mental, emotional abuse, no more trafficking, but just he was a narcissist and it was rough. But out of that came my beautiful daughter, who's a treasure and a gift forever and ever. And finally, at the end of that, I was strong enough during those years. I began to grow in my faith and grow in my strength. And he actually had an affair. And when he told me about it, that was the moment where the cloud kind of lifted. And I realized, wait a minute, I'm not the one that has the problem, because he had me convinced that everything was my fault. And if you've ever been around a narcissist, you know what that's like. And in that moment, I was like, wait, that's not true. Because he said to me, I'm having an affair because the pain in our marriage is so great that God brought me this woman. And I'm going, God would not do that to me. So that's not right. And somehow that like shone a light and kind of let that fog lift, that trauma fog. And I was able to say, no, I'm out of here. I finally got out of that marriage. And by the time we split up, I was 30, I believe. And so then from 30 until my 50s, I never dealt with any of that trauma. I stuffed it down. I ignored it. I thought if nobody knows about this, then good. And it will go away. But when I got into my 50s, I married again to a wonderful man who I did tell that story to, and he loved me and has been wonderful. We've been married almost 33 years. But somewhere along that, when I got into my 50s, I began to have this desire, like I've been talking to you about, of developing my strengths and finding my purpose. And really, I taught school for many years, and that was fulfilling for all that time. But then here I am in my 50s, and I'm realizing, time's going by really, really fast. And I wasn't teaching anymore. I wasn't in a job that I loved. And so as I began this search for what do I want to do now that's going to make a difference in something I'm passionate about, that's when I started running up against this wall of the story I had been telling myself for 30 plus years that I wasn't good enough. And that had caused me to play small and quiet and timid and shrink back because I didn't want anybody to know about my past, and I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't realize what a hold it had on my life and on my confidence and my sense of self-worth. So finally, I went through a period of healing with a group in my church, a lot of counseling, a lot of prayer, a lot of processing through all of that, getting all of that out in the open. And when I did that, I began to see the truth that it wasn't that I was worthless. I had been drugged and raped. I had been trafficked. I had been a victim. I had been traumatized. And as I began to see the truth of what had happened to me, and then, God led me through that whole journey of seeing the greatness within me, everything changed. And I was able to embrace my past, embrace my younger self with love and compassion instead of shame. And then I was able to talk about it because the shame was gone. And as I shared more and more of my story, I began to see other women open up and say, oh my gosh, if you went through that and now you're here, there's hope for me as well. Even if it's not the same kind of trauma story, it's whatever journey brought you to this place of not having confidence, if you unpack it and you start to see the truth, because you probably are thinking some thoughts about yourself that are not true. And so there's this unpacking. A part of my STAR process is the T. It's telling yourself the truth about who you are and about the things that have happened to you. Because things happen to us and we start adopting a story around it. And almost all of us have some sort of story that says we're not good enough. And so as you unpack that and you start to say, well, wait a minute, how true is this really, this story I've been telling myself all these years? And you start to look for the evidence of the truth of who you are by seeing the good things in you. And then those old stories begin to fade away. And what I started to notice is I started to emerge as a confident woman who was taking center stage as the star of her own story. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm saying things, I'm speaking up, I'm doing things I was always afraid to do before. And it's because I have gone through this process. And now I'm taking action and making things happen. I'm going after my dreams. I'm going after my goals. I'm not afraid anymore. And so things started to happen. And I eventually became a coach and started a business and have had a great impact on hundreds of women's lives and some men too, actually, along the way, and wrote a book, actually wrote 2 books, and I've contributed to 3 other books. Things I never thought I would do. I'm speaking on stages. And it's because I went through this process. And so what I love to share with people is how you can also come into your own. The first step is the S, which I call that stirring your soul, stirring up yourself, like waking up. We all kind of walk through life, on autopilot often, and we're just kind of doing the same things that I did for 30 something years, right? But when I had the wake up moment, sitting there in church one day, realizing, oh my gosh, I could get to the end of my life and not fulfill my purpose. I don't want that to happen. You get into your 50s and 60s and you realize, wow, that went by fast. I'm actually turning 70 this month. Time goes so fast. And in that moment, I thought, I do not want to waste another day or spend another day not fulfilling my purpose. And I have fulfilled a lot of my purpose up to this point as a teacher. I have done a lot of good things, but what am I doing now? And as I began to stir my soul, stir myself up, I realized I had a choice. And the choice, I was making the choice to shrink back. I was choosing that. But I could make the choice to step out there and fulfill my purpose and find out what that is. And so I did that. I made a conscious choice. I said yes to me, which led me into the healing process, which then eventually led me into coaching and doing what I absolutely love. And I know I'm meant to do this. Was it easy? No. There's a lot of work, a lot of times where I did question myself, and I had to, again, come back to that point of, this is what I'm meant to do, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get through this obstacle. And like knowing your why and knowing everything I had been through in my life to that point, I knew if I just kept going, I would accomplish what I'm meant to accomplish. And in that process of telling the truth, there was a lot of seeing lies that I had been believing about myself and looking at who I really am and what is the truth, and choosing to embrace the truth, choosing to forgive all those men that had taken advantage of me, choosing to forgive myself, because that's the biggest one, really, for most of us. And then that led me into this place of taking action and being activated and accepting all that I am and not being ashamed of me anymore. And that action started to open doors for me. So that's the A in STAR. And the R is like this place of, I call it release the river. Because that comes from a time, one time I was in church, and the visiting pastors, I went up for prayer, and he looks at me eye to eye and he goes, "You draw from the river inside, don't you?" And I was like, "Whoa, what does that mean?" And I just kind of sat with that for a while. And I know there's a scripture where, it talks about that we all have this river of life springing up from within. And I thought, yeah, like deep inside yourself, you have a soul and a spirit, like the deepest essence of who you are is like a river. Rivers flow and they make an impact everywhere they go. They carve out a path. They overcome obstacles. They change the environment, and they're powerful. And if you're releasing all of who you are without hindrance anymore, you are releasing a river of flow. There's a flow to your life, and it seems effortless often, even when you run up against obstacles, because you are fully being you. And as you're releasing that, it's making an impact. So go through those again. Yes, absolutely. So S is stir your soul, stir yourself awake. I'll put them in the chat here. Stir your soul. Tell the truth is T. Accept and activate, and release the river. And this is all in my book. And I actually have a workbook that goes with my book that walks you through exercises. If you're interested, you can buy the paper copy of the workbook, or you can download a free version. There's a code inside the book itself. And each of these steps is kind of like more of a phase. So the stirring your soul involves like kind of waking up. What's happening in my life? Where am I right now? What am I doing? Where do I want to go? And saying yes to you. And then tell the truth is a pretty long one because it involves a lot more inner work. But once you've done it, there's this acceptance that comes. And I just love this feeling of being happy with who I am, being comfortable in my own skin. I mean, I never felt that way. And it is the most freeing feeling that there is, because again, you're not trying to live up to somebody else's expectation. You're not comparing yourself anymore and feeling that, gosh, I wish I was more like her or him, and then the competition feeling goes away. The perfectionism goes away. And you're just in this place of, I love who I am. And I don't mean that in a braggy, boastful way. I mean that in that sense, where if you love yourself, you can love other people. If you don't love yourself, you can't love other people. So it's a very authentic, real place to be. And when you're in that place and you're releasing all that you are, you're making an impact. Every single one of you is meant to make an impact in the world. And probably you have already. And maybe you know you have and you've seen it, and maybe you don't know, but you have. And now you can even make a greater impact. There's until we cross over and transition into the next life, we're here, we're breathing, we're walking on this earth. We have an impact to make. We have a purpose to live. And we have treasures inside to give and to share. And that's really my message to all people, but especially women, is to shine your light, be the star of your own story, know that you're awesome and amazing. And when you shine your light, you're not diminishing anybody else's light. You are helping other people shine their light as well. So that's really all I had to share with you. And I definitely am open to questions. If you want to come on and unmute yourself and ask, or ask in the chat box, I'd love to answer any questions. Oh, awesome. So Emily, you shared something privately. Do you want to share that? I think that's beautiful. That's a really great thing to do. Is it okay if I share what you wrote, Emily?
Yes.
Okay. She said, I tied cardstock around the backs of each member at our Christmas party last year. Across the top read, "You should know what people are saying about you behind your back." Each member had markers and were instructed to write words that describe the person. Afterwards, I took the sheets and read the words and phrases. The audience had to guess the person. Really makes a feel-good feeling to hear what others think about us. That is such a cool thing to do. I love that. We did something similar in my coach training where we had a piece of paper taped to our back. I think it was at the end of the whole thing after we'd gotten to know each other. And everybody walked around and wrote words on the back of the person, but you didn't see it until the end. And it was just such a treasure to keep, take home that piece of paper where people said things about you. So any questions, comments?
Well, I
Hi,
think it's a great activity.
Yeah. Somebody
Hi.
else?
Yeah, this is Andrea. I'm calling from Washington State, and thank you, Scott, for inviting me. And I'm currently sitting in my car, so please forgive me if you hear any noise. But I think it's awesome that you have gone through this journey and you are now in a very confident place to tell your story. Sometimes it can be the small things or it could be the large things that just set us off, where we just want to retreat and hide away and go through life in this minuscule way.
Yeah.
But you, through your journey, you have embraced what has happened and you've turned it around and you've moved forward. And I have to say, by the grace of God, we can't do this by ourselves.
That's right.
You are now you're in a very good place, and you're able to confidently share your story. I know that there's still some tinges of pain from having gone through all of this, but I applaud you for sharing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it took me a long time to get here. One thing I realized when I did start sharing it with people, I realized it's not about me. It's not about my story. It's really about opening the doors for other people to be real with themselves too, and giving them permission, to embrace their own story. They don't have to tell it publicly. But I think a lot of us feel like, nobody else has gone through something like this. And that's how I felt. I felt like if I told people my story, they would not want to be associated with me. They would think I was this terrible person. It's that shame that makes us want to hide. And we all have a piece of that in our lives. But when I realized that, it's not because I thought, well, I don't want to tell people this story. It's depressing. It's sad. It's shocking. But many of my mentors too have told me, you have to share that, because it helps others to deal with their own and to see that they're not alone, and that they can be real with themselves, and that, the things that happen to you are not who you are. They're just things that happen to you. And shame makes us feel bad for who we are, because we're taking what happened to us and putting it together and thinking that's because of who we are. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it's very common too with trauma victims to feel that way. And so if you could separate and know, okay, what happened to me was just something that happened to me, and these people, it's they did for whatever reason that they were the way they were. And I want to forgive and let them go because I do not want to be attached to that. I'm just, God will deal with them. But what happened to me at the hands of these guys was not dictating to me my identity as a whole, worthy, valuable person. And once I saw that, it was like, oh, and this is what is my why for sharing my story, so others can see that as well. Men and women. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Andrea. Karen.
I think that this journey sometimes takes many years, and the hardest thing is tearing down those walls that you've built around yourself, because you see yourself how you think other people, you're not who they are. You have to find within yourself, and that's the hardest part. And then the rest of the journey can be so much more fun and easy. But yeah, tearing down those walls is the most important part, I think. And see yourself for who you really are.
Yeah, that's spot on. Exactly. Those walls we build up really are made up of stories we've told ourselves about who we are. And often we do think it's what other people think too. And it's usually not. Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Going right along with that, and I put that in the chat, but we always have a tendency to compare our worst because we know ourselves the very best. We know everything. We know every dark, deep secret about ourselves, and we compare it against people that we see, and we don't know all their bad things, and we compare it against their best, and all of a sudden we don't even come close to them. And I think that by Janelle, by you sharing these kind of things, and all of us have had some of these experiences, that we need to realize that we're not so bad after all, and we grow from our experiences. And I just looked at what you've done and where you're at, and it's just a wonderful thing that's happened, I just actually I speak in church at times, and I talk about the blessings from living with less. Sometimes it isn't just the material things in life, but the things of so
True.
Thank you very much for doing this. This has been very inspirational.
Oh, good. I hope so. It's always my desire to inspire. When I was in my coach training and I was still wrestling with all of this, one exercise we had to do was to figure out what our gremlin was. And that's really your inner critic. And when I identified, it's funny you talked about tearing down walls, Karen. When I was young, I grew up in a really big family. We had 8 children. I was the oldest girl, I had 2 older brothers. My voice got lost in all that, right? All the noise and activity. And we would sit around the dinner table and I would try to say something and nobody'd pay attention to me. And because my voice is quiet, and I would turn to the wall and just talk to the wall, literally. And my siblings would stop and they'd look at me, what are you doing? I'm talking to the wall. Why? Because the wall will listen to me. And it became a family joke. But in my heart, I was telling myself the story that what I had to say was not important because they weren't listening to me. And then when I was in coach training and we were identifying this gremlin message, that was my message. Like, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. You're too boring. You're too quiet. Nobody, And when I identified that really came from that feeling as a child growing up in a big family. Was it true? No, it was not true that they didn't want to hear what I have to say. What was true was that it was a busy family full of kids that are loud and, rambunctious. That's all. And so but we had to identify the gremlin message, and then we were supposed to identify the opposite that would counteract that, what was really true. And I could not, it was my turn to share, and I'm standing there in front of all these people, all eyes on me. I wasn't confident as a speaker at all yet. So I share the gremlin message and then I'm totally blank. I have no counter message. I have no idea. And I'm standing there and the instructor's just looking at me. Everybody's looking at me. And I'm like, I wish the floor would swallow me up because I'm so embarrassed and nervous and I can't think of anything. And it seemed like an eternity. And finally, one of my classmates says, "You're an inspiration. That's your new word. You inspire." And I was like, yes, I want to grab a hold of that. And I did. I received it and it became kind of my mantra. And I have it everywhere. I have a plaque that says, here, I'll show you. Especially since you just said I was inspiring, inspire. And so this became my new message that I'm inspiring. And it came true. I mean, because, you know, what you believe about yourself really comes true. So you want to believe the truth. So I tore
You
down the walls, Karen.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I like to say again, thank you for sharing. You only come this way once. And so whatever good we can do on our journey through our life, we do it, and we do it now. We do it with intent. We do it with love, when we do it with compassion. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think all of our children and young adults need to know that every person in the world has problems. You might look at someone that looks successful. That doesn't mean they have, they may have problems that we don't know about.
Yep. Very true. And just like what Scott was saying, you know, we see the worst in ourselves and we only see the good that they're showing us. And we don't see that, you know, they're having problems too. We all struggle. So I love that. And try to look for the good in yourself as well as in other people. Carrie?
Hey, Janelle, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And I look forward to reading your book and doing the
Yay.
workbook. It was a wonderful presentation, but more importantly, it wasn't that it was a presentation, but you spoke from your heart. And I appreciate that so much. So
Thank you.
I'm like on cloud 9 right now. Thank you.
Good. Yay.
And Janelle, that's my daughter.
Oh, nice. Nice to meet you, Carrie. I love that you shared that because I was like, should I do a PowerPoint? Should I not? And I just felt really in my heart. I just wanted to talk to you all and just share from my heart. So I'm glad that resonates.
Well,
Awesome.
Janelle, like I said, once I just set it all up and I let people present, and some people like to do it different ways. And I'm really touched by the way you did there. And I think, does the email have your title of your book in it, doesn't it? The invitation I sent out?
Yes, I think in your email that you sent out, it has a link to buy my book. So I hope that you all will do that.
All right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me, Scott, and everyone.
Oh.
It's really been a pleasure to be here today.
No, the honor is ours.
Thank you, Janelle.
You're welcome.
The honor is ours. And I appreciate maybe, you know, some other time or something like that. I'm going to keep you on the list. So you'll on there. And in July, I have a lady in Tennessee, Emily, a lady in Tennessee is going to do one, and I'm not quite sure what it's on. It's always kind of a surprise for me. It's on Christmas in July. And then I have an agent from Yuma, Arizona for August. And I still need other presenters. So
Well,
by the way,
anytime.
this will be recorded. I mean, or it is being recorded, and it will be available on our Oregon FCE website. And it'll actually be on YouTube, and I'll just put the link on there. So you can go and evaluate yourself there, Janelle.
Okay, I will. And I'll share it with my audience too.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful
Thank
rest of your
you.
day. Bye-bye.
Thank
Nice.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all attending. And Andrea,
Thank
it was
you.
really nice to see you.
Thank you. And we'll be in touch very
Okay.
soon. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, we're going to invite you to our state conference.
When? What date?
Very first part of October.
Consider it done. Thank you. I
All
look
right.
forward to receiving your information. Talk to you
All right.
soon.
I'll get it to you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And Scott, maybe you'll say a prayer that my leg works better, because I can hardly walk. I mean, I'm having a lot of problems even walking.